The rain was falling hard on the streets of downtown Chicago. Cold, merciless drops hammered the pavement like 1,000 tiny fists. And there, in the middle of it all, stood a woman worth $4 billion, her designer dress soaked, her mascara running down her cheeks, kneeling on the wet concrete in front of a man, holding a mop and a bucket. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking, "please, marry me." The janitor looked down at her, his face unreadable. Around them, people had stopped walking. Some held their phones up recording. Others whispered to each other, pointing at the bizarre scene unfolding before them. A billionaire, on her knees, begging a janitor. But the man didn't smile. He didn't reach out to help her up. He didn't say yes. Instead, he said something that made the entire crowd gasp. "I'll consider it," he said slowly, "but first, you need to apologize." The woman's eyes widened, her lips trembled. Apologize? For what? The janitor leaned down, his voice barely above a whisper, but loud enough for those closest to hear. "You know exactly what you did, Victoria. You destroyed me, you took everything from me, and now you want me to pretend it never happened?" Victoria's face went pale. Her hands, still clasped together in a pleading gesture, began to shake. I didn't." "Yes, you did," he interrupted. "And until you admit it, until you look me in the eyes and tell me the truth about what happened 8 years ago, I will never marry you." He straightened up, picked up his bucket, and walked away, leaving the most powerful woman in Chicago, kneeling in the rain, surrounded by strangers, completely and utterly broken. What could she possibly have done to him? What secret was buried so deep that even billions of dollars couldn't erase it? To understand that, we need to go back to a time when Victoria Hartwell wasn't a billionaire, back to when Marcus Thompson wasn't a janitor, back to when they were just two young people who believed love could conquer anything. They were wrong. 8 years earlier, Victoria Chen was nobody special. She was a 24-year-old marketing assistant at a small advertising firm in Chicago, sharing a cramped apartment with 2 roommates, eating ramen noodles 3 times a week, and dreaming of a life she could barely imagine. She had grown up poor. Her father had abandoned the family when she was 7, leaving her mother to raise 3 children on a waitress's salary. Victoria had watched her mother work double shifts, come home with swollen feet and tired eyes, and still find the energy to help with homework and pack lunches. "Never depend on anyone," her mother used to say, "especially not a man. Make your own money, Victoria. Make your own life." Victoria had taken those words to heart. She worked hard in school, earned a scholarship to Northwestern University, and graduated with honors. But honors didn't pay the bills. The job market was brutal, and she was grateful just to have a position, even if it paid barely enough to survive. That's when she met Marcus Thompson. He was a rising star at a tech company called Novatech, working as a software engineer, brilliant, kind, and handsome in a quiet, unassuming way. They met at a coffee shop near her office, both reaching for the same newspaper. "Sorry," he said, pulling his hand back. "You take it." No, you were here first," she replied. They both laughed, and something sparked between them, something neither of them expected. "How about we share?" he suggested. "I only need the sports section anyway." "And I only need the business section," she said with a smile. They sat together for 2 hours that morning, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his dreams of starting his own company someday, of creating technology that would help people, not just make money. She told him about her mother, about growing up poor, about her fear of ending up like her father, running away from responsibility. "I would never run away," Marcus said, his eyes serious. "When I commit to something, I commit completely. That's just who I am." Victoria believed him, and for the first time in her life she allowed herself to fall in love. Their relationship moved quickly. Within 6 months they were inseparable. Within a year they were engaged. Victoria had never been happier. Marcus was everything she had ever wanted. He was stable, reliable, loving. He didn't just tell her he loved her, he showed it every single day. When she was sick, he brought her soup and stayed by her bedside. When she was stressed about work, he gave her massages and listened to her vent for hours. When she doubted herself, he was there to remind her of her worth. "You're going to be someone great," he would say. "I can see it in you. You have this fire, this determination. Don't ever let anyone dim that light." Marcus was also a wonderful father to his young son, Ethan. The boy was only 3 years old when Victoria met him, the product of a brief relationship that hadn't worked out. But Marcus had stepped up completely. He had full custody, and he treated fatherhood like it was the most important job in the world. Victoria fell in love with Ethan, too, the little boy with his father's eyes and his father's smile, who called her Vicky and begged her to read him bedtime stories. "Will you be my new mommy?" Ethan asked one night, his innocent eyes looking up at her. Victoria felt her heart swell. "I would love nothing more," she whispered. Life was perfect, or so she thought. The problems started when Victoria's career began to take off. She was promoted to senior marketing manager, then to director. Her ideas were brilliant, her work ethic unmatched. Companies started noticing her. Headhunters called constantly. One day, she received an offer that would change everything. Richard Hartwell, the billionaire CEO of Hartwell Industries, wanted to meet with her personally. He had seen her work, heard about her reputation, and he wanted her to lead the marketing division of his company. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity," her boss told her. "Richard Hartwell doesn't meet with people like us. If he wants you, you go." Victoria went. Richard Hartwell was 62 years old, silver-haired, and intimidating. He had built his empire from nothing, starting with a small manufacturing company and growing it into a multinational conglomerate worth billions. He was known for his ruthlessness, his brilliance, and his ability to spot talent. "I've been watching you," he said, leaning back in his leather chair. "You remind me of myself when I was young, hungry, ambitious, willing to do whatever it takes." "I don't know if I would go that far," Victoria said carefully. "That's because you haven't been tested yet," Richard replied. "But you will be. Life has a way of testing all of us. The question is, when that moment comes, what will you choose, security or greatness, love or power?" Victoria didn't understand what he meant. Not then. "I want to offer you a job," Richard continued. "Not just any job. I want you to be my protege. I'll teach you everything I know. In 10 years, you could be running this company." That's incredibly generous," Victoria stammered. "But I have a fiancé, a family. I can't just—" "I'm not asking you to give them up," Richard said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm asking you to prioritize. There's a difference." Victoria left that meeting feeling confused and unsettled. But she also felt something else. Excitement. The kind of excitement she hadn't felt in a long time. She didn't tell Marcus about the meeting right away. She told herself she needed time to think. But deep down, she knew the truth. She was afraid of what he would say. Afraid that he would ask her to choose, and afraid of what her choice might be. The weeks that followed were torture. Richard Hartwell kept calling, kept pushing, kept offering her more and more. A higher salary, a penthouse apartment, stock options worth millions. "I don't understand why you're hesitating," he said during one of their many phone calls. "Most people would kill for this opportunity." "I know," Victoria replied. "But my fiancé, he has a son. We have a life together." "And what kind of life is that?" Richard asked. "A life where you're always wondering what could have been? A life where you settle for less than you deserve?" "It's not settling," Victoria said, but her voice wavered. "Isn't it?" Richard pressed. "Victoria, I've seen thousands of people in my career. I know potential when I see it. You were meant for greatness. Don't let anyone hold you back, not even someone you love." That night, Victoria went home and looked at Marcus. Really looked at him. He was playing with Ethan on the floor, building a tower out of blocks, laughing every time it fell down. He looked up at her and smiled. "Hey, you're home. How was your day?" "Fine," she lied. "Just fine." But it wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. Because Victoria had started to see Marcus differently, not as the love of her life, but as an obstacle, not as her partner, but as her chain. And that terrified her. The breaking point came 3 months later. Richard Hartwell made his final offer. He wanted Victoria to move to New York to oversee a major expansion project. It would take at least 2 years, possibly more. The compensation was astronomical. The opportunity was unprecedented. But there was a catch. "I need someone fully committed," Richard said. "Someone without distractions. Your fiancé, his son. They would be complications. I'm not saying you have to end things, but I am saying that if you take this job, you need to be prepared to put them second." Victoria knew what she should say. She should say no. She should walk away. She should go home to Marcus and Ethan and never look back. But she didn't. "I'll take the job," she heard herself say, "but I need time to sort things out." Richard smiled. "Of course. Take all the time you need. But remember, Victoria, time waits for no one." That night, Victoria made the biggest mistake of her life. She didn't talk to Marcus. She didn't explain. She didn't give him a chance to understand. Instead, she wrote him a letter, a cold, clinical letter that said she needed space and time to focus on her career. She packed her things while he was at work and Ethan was at preschool. She left her engagement ring on the kitchen counter, and she disappeared. Marcus came home to an empty apartment and a broken heart. But Victoria's betrayal didn't stop there. What she didn't know, what she refused to acknowledge, was that she was pregnant. She discovered it 2 weeks after moving to New York, when the morning sickness became impossible to ignore. She could have called Marcus then. She should have called Marcus then. But she was too ashamed, too afraid, too deep into her new life to go back. So she made another terrible decision. She kept the pregnancy a secret. When her daughter was born, she named her Lily, a beautiful little girl with Victoria's eyes and Marcus's smile, a constant reminder of the man she had abandoned. Victoria told everyone the father was unknown, that it was a one-night stand, that she was raising the child alone. Richard Hartwell, surprisingly, was supportive. He saw it as a sign of her strength, her independence. "A woman who can build an empire and raise a child at the same time," he said approvingly. "Now that's someone I can respect." Years passed. Victoria climbed the corporate ladder with ruthless efficiency. When Richard Hartwell died of a heart attack 5 years later, he left her everything: his company, his fortune, his legacy. Victoria Chen became Victoria Hartwell, the billionaire CEO of Hartwell Industries. She was featured on magazine covers, invited to exclusive events, celebrated as one of the most powerful women in America. But at night, when the world was quiet and Lily was asleep, Victoria would stare at the ceiling and think about Marcus, about Ethan, about the family she had thrown away for money and power. She tried to find them once, hired a private investigator. But Marcus had moved, changed jobs, seemingly vanished. It was as if he didn't want to be found. And why would he? After what she did. Victoria told herself she had made the right choice. She told herself that Marcus was better off without her, that Ethan didn't need a mother who would always be distracted by work. But deep down, she knew the truth. She had been selfish. She had been cruel. She had been a coward. And now, 8 years later, fate was about to force her to confront everything she had buried. Victoria didn't recognize Marcus at first. She had been visiting one of her company's new office buildings in Chicago, a routine inspection that her assistants usually handled, but she had felt nostalgic that day, wanting to see the city where she had once been young and hopeful and in love. The building was still under construction, and she had wandered through the halls, imagining what it would look like when completed. That's when she saw him. A janitor mopping the floor in a half-finished lobby. He was older, thinner, with gray at his temples and lines on his face that hadn't been there before. His uniform was worn and faded, his shoes scuffed and old, but his eyes, those eyes. Victoria stopped walking. Her heart stopped beating. "Marcus?" she whispered. The janitor looked up, and in that moment Victoria saw everything, the recognition, the pain, the anger, 8 years of suffering written across his face in an instant. "Victoria," he said, not with surprise, not with joy, just a flat, empty statement of fact. Why am I mopping floors?" he finished for her. "Is that what you want to know? Why the man you abandoned is now cleaning up after people like you?" Victoria couldn't speak. She couldn't breathe. Marcus leaned on his mop, a bitter smile crossing his face. Life happened, Victoria. Life happened. Later, Victoria would learn the full story, and it would break her heart into a million pieces. After she left, Marcus had fallen apart. He had loved her so completely, so deeply, that her abandonment had shattered something inside him. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't work. He lost his job at Novatech, not because of poor performance, but because he simply couldn't function. He was a shell of the man he had been, going through the motions of life without really living. Ethan, only 5 years old, didn't understand why Vicky had left. He cried for weeks, asking when she was coming back. Marcus didn't have the heart to tell him the truth, so he lied and said she had to go away for work, that she would visit soon. But soon never came. Marcus burned through his savings trying to find her. He hired lawyers, investigators, anyone who might be able to track her down. But Victoria had covered her tracks well. Richard Hartwell's lawyers had made sure of that. "She doesn't want to be found," one investigator finally told him. "Whatever she's running from, she's running hard." Marcus didn't understand. He couldn't understand. What had he done wrong? Why wasn't he good enough? The depression spiraled into something worse. Marcus started drinking, trying to numb the pain. His family tried to help, but he pushed them away. He was too proud, too ashamed, too broken. And then, at his lowest point, something happened that should have been a blessing, but instead became a curse. Marcus's sister, who had been watching Ethan while Marcus struggled, was killed in a car accident. It was sudden, senseless, tragic. One moment she was alive, the next she was gone. The accident left Ethan injured, requiring months of physical therapy and medical care. Marcus, already drowning in debt, had to take whatever job he could find. His engineering career was over. No company would hire someone with his employment gap and erratic history. So he became a janitor, first at a school, then at an office building, then at construction sites, where the work was hard and the pay was low and nobody asked questions about your past. He did it for Ethan. He did it to survive. He did it because he had no other choice. And through it all, he never stopped thinking about Victoria, the woman who had promised to love him, then vanished without a word. Victoria learned all of this in fragments over the following weeks. She didn't approach Marcus again after that first encounter. She was too ashamed, too overwhelmed by guilt, but she couldn't stay away either. She found herself driving past the construction site, watching from her car as he worked, trying to understand how the man she had loved had fallen so far. She hired another private investigator, this time to find out what had happened to Marcus after she left. The report, when it came, made her physically ill. Everything she had built, all her success and power and wealth, suddenly felt meaningless. She had destroyed a good man. She had abandoned her daughter's father without even telling him he had a daughter. She had taken his chance at happiness and crushed it beneath her heel. Victoria knew she had to make things right. But how? How do you apologize for ruining someone's life? How do you fix something that has been broken for 8 years? The answer came to her one night as she watched Lily sleep. Her daughter was 7 years old now, smart, funny, and curious about everything. She had asked about her father many times, and Victoria had always deflected, always lied. But Lily deserved to know the truth. And Marcus deserved to know he had a daughter. And Victoria? Victoria deserved nothing. She knew that. But maybe, just maybe, she could try to earn some small measure of redemption. That's when she made her decision. The crazy, desperate, impossible decision that led to her kneeling in the rain outside a construction site, begging a janitor to marry her. But Marcus's response had thrown her completely. Apologize? She had expected rejection. She had expected anger. She had even expected him to walk away without a word. But she hadn't expected him to demand an apology, because an apology meant admitting what she had done. It meant saying the words out loud. It meant facing the full weight of her actions. And Victoria wasn't sure she was strong enough for that. The days after her failed proposal were agony. The video had gone viral, of course. Billionaire begs janitor for marriage was everywhere. The internet couldn't decide if it was romantic or insane or some kind of elaborate publicity stunt. Victoria's board of directors was furious. Her PR team was in crisis mode. Everyone wanted to know what she was thinking, what was going on, who this janitor was, and why he mattered so much. But Victoria didn't care about any of that. She only cared about one thing: Marcus's demand. Apologize. She played his words over and over in her head. You know exactly what you did. You destroyed me. You took everything from me. He was right. She did know. She had always known. But knowing and admitting were two different things. A week later, Victoria tracked Marcus down again. This time at his apartment, a small, cramped unit in a rundown building on the south side of Chicago. She stood outside his door for 20 minutes before she finally knocked. When he opened it, he didn't look surprised to see her. He looked tired, old, defeated. "I figured you'd come," he said. "You always did have trouble taking no for an answer. Can I come in?" He hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment was clean but sparse. A worn couch, a small TV, pictures on the wall, mostly of Ethan at various ages. The boy was a teenager now, Victoria realized. 15 years old. She had missed 10 years of his life. "Where's Ethan?" she asked. "At school. He's a good kid. Made honor roll last semester." Marcus's voice softened when he talked about his son. "He's the only reason I'm still standing." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "Marcus, Before you say anything," he interrupted, "I need you to understand something. I don't hate you, Victoria. I did, for a long time. I hated you so much I could barely see straight. But hate takes energy, and I ran out of energy a long time ago." "What do you feel now?" He considered the question. "I don't know. Numb, mostly. When I saw you at the construction site, I felt, I don't know, like I was seeing a ghost, someone who used to exist but doesn't anymore." "I'm still here," Victoria said softly. "I'm still the same person." "No." Marcus shook his head. "No, you're not. The Victoria I knew would never have left the way you did. The Victoria I knew would never have vanished without a word, without an explanation, without even a goodbye." "I was scared," Victoria admitted. "I was young and ambitious and terrified of becoming my mother. I thought if I stayed I would always wonder what might have been. I thought I was choosing my future." "You were choosing yourself," Marcus corrected. "You were choosing money and power over love. That's fine. That's your right, but don't pretend it was about anything else." The words hit Victoria like a slap, because he was right. Again. She sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I know I was selfish. I know I was wrong. I've known it every single day for 8 years." "Then why didn't you ever come back?" Marcus asked. "Why didn't you ever call or write or send a message? I would have listened, Victoria. I would have tried to understand." "Because I was a coward," she whispered. "Because I was ashamed. Because every time I thought about what I did, I couldn't face it. So I buried it. I buried you and Ethan and everything we had. I told myself it was better that way. That you would move on, find someone else, be happy." "Well, I didn't," Marcus said flatly. I didn't move on. I didn't find someone else. And I am definitely not happy." Victoria looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "What do you want from me, Marcus? What can I possibly do to make this right?" "I told you," he said. "Apologize." "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I'm so sorry." "No." He held up a hand. "Not like that. Not a quick sorry that you spit out without thinking. I want a real apology. I want you to look me in the eyes and tell me exactly what you're sorry for. Every single thing." Victoria's breath caught in her throat. This was it. This was the moment she had been dreading for 8 years. She took a deep breath and began. "I'm sorry for leaving without saying goodbye. I'm sorry for not having the courage to tell you to your face that I was scared and confused and didn't know what I wanted. I'm sorry for disappearing in the middle of the night like a thief, taking everything we had and leaving you with nothing but questions." Marcus stood perfectly still, his face unreadable. "I'm sorry for the letter." God, that letter. I wrote it in 20 minutes, like our relationship was a business deal I needed to terminate. I didn't tell you how much you meant to me. I didn't tell you that you were the best thing that ever happened to me. I just ended it. Like it was nothing. "Oh, it wasn't nothing to me," Marcus said quietly. I know that now. I'm sorry I didn't know it then." Victoria stood up, facing him directly. "I'm sorry for what happened to your career. I'm sorry for the drinking and the depression and the spiral. I'm sorry I wasn't there when your sister died, when Ethan needed help, when everything fell apart. I'm sorry you had to become a janitor to survive when you deserved so much more." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. "I'm sorry for hiding from you, for covering my tracks so well that you could never find me, for letting you think I didn't care when the truth is I cared so much it terrified me." She took another breath. This was the hardest part. "And I'm sorry for not telling you about Lily." Marcus blinked. "What?" Victoria's voice trembled. "Lily. Our daughter. She's 7 years old. She has your eyes and your smile, and she asks about her father all the time. I never told you she existed. I never gave you the chance to know her." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus's face went through 100 emotions in the span of seconds. Shock, confusion, disbelief, pain. And finally, slowly, a terrible dawning realization. "I have a daughter," he said, not a question. A statement. "Yes. I have a daughter, and you kept her from me for 7 years. "Yes." "Why?" The word came out broken, ragged. "Why would you do that? How could you do that?" "Because I was selfish," Victoria said, the tears flowing freely now. "Because I was building my empire, and I didn't want any complications. Because I told myself she was better off not knowing, that you would only make things complicated. Because I was a coward, Marcus. A coward, and a liar, and a terrible, terrible person." Marcus turned away from her, his shoulders shaking. For a long moment he didn't speak. Couldn't speak. Then, finally, "Do you have a picture?" Victoria pulled out her phone with trembling hands and opened her photo gallery. She scrolled to a recent picture of Lily, a gap-toothed smile lighting up her face. "This was from her birthday last month," Victoria said, handing him the phone. Marcus stared at the screen, his daughter, his little girl. The child he never knew existed, growing up without him, calling another man daddy, or perhaps no one at all. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "She looks like you." "Does she know about me?" Victoria hesitated. "She knows she has a father somewhere. I've never given her details. I didn't know how." Marcus closed his eyes, a single tear sliding down his cheek. "I missed everything. Her first words, her first steps, her first day of school, 7 years of her life, and I wasn't there for any of it." "I know," Victoria said, "and I'm sorrier for that than anything else. That's the thing I can never take back, the thing I can never fix." She sank back down onto the couch, utterly spent. "So there it is," she said, "the whole truth. Every terrible thing I did, every selfish choice, every moment of cowardice, I'm sorry for all of it, Marcus. I'm sorry from the bottom of my soul." Marcus was quiet for a long time. The apartment was silent except for the distant sound of traffic and the ticking of a clock on the wall. Finally he spoke. "Do you remember what I told you the first day we met? About commitment?" Victoria nodded. "You said when you commit to something, you commit completely." "I meant it. I meant every word. When I asked you to marry me, I was committing to you for life. I wasn't going to leave. I wasn't going to give up. Even when things got hard, even when we disagreed, I was going to stay and fight." "I know," Victoria whispered. "You were the one who left," Marcus continued. "You were the one who gave up, and for 8 years I wondered what I did wrong. What was so terrible about me that you couldn't even say goodbye?" "There was nothing wrong with you," Victoria said fiercely. "Nothing. You were perfect. You were everything I ever wanted." "Then why wasn't I enough?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Victoria closed her eyes. "Because I didn't believe I deserved you. Deep down, I still thought I was that poor girl from the wrong side of town, the one whose father abandoned her, the one who would never be good enough. Richard Hartwell offered me a chance to become someone else, someone powerful, someone who would never be left behind again." "But you became the one who leaves," Marcus said. "I know. I became exactly what I feared most, and I've had to live with that every day since." Marcus sighed heavily and sat down on the other end of the couch. He looked exhausted, like this conversation had drained the last of his energy. "Do you know what the worst part is?" he asked. "The worst part is that I still love you. After everything you did, after all the pain and the lies, some stupid part of me still loves you." Victoria's heart clenched. "Marcus." "I'm not saying this because I want to get back together," he continued. "I'm saying it because it's the truth, and I've spent too many years hiding from the truth. You broke me, Victoria. You broke me in ways I didn't think were possible, but you also gave me the best years of my life. Those 2 years we were together, those were the happiest years I've ever had." "They were mine too," Victoria admitted, "and now you're telling me I have a daughter I've never met, who doesn't know I exist." He shook his head. "How am I supposed to process that?" "I don't know," Victoria said honestly. "I don't have all the answers. I don't even have most of them. All I know is that I want to make things right, whatever that looks like. However long it takes." Marcus looked at her for a long moment, and for the first time his expression softened slightly. "You really did come back," he said. "I never thought you would." "I should have come back years ago." "Yes," he agreed, "you should have. But you're here now." He stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the gray Chicago sky. "My son comes home from school in about an hour," he said. "He's going to have questions. He remembers you, you know, not clearly, but he remembers. He used to call you his almost mom." Victoria felt a fresh wave of guilt wash over her. "I'm sorry I left him too." "I know you are." Marcus turned around to face her. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm not going to say yes to your proposal, not now. Probably not ever. Too much has happened, too much pain, too many lies." Victoria nodded, her heart sinking. "But," he continued, "I want to meet my daughter. I want Ethan to meet his sister. And I want us to figure out together how to be some kind of family, not husband and wife, maybe not even friends, but something that puts the kids first." "I can do that," Victoria said quickly. "I can absolutely do that. And one more thing." Marcus's voice hardened slightly. "You have to stop running. No more disappearing, no more covering your tracks, no more hiding behind your money and your lawyers. If you're going to be in our lives, you need to be really in, present, accountable, honest." "I will be," Victoria promised. "I swear on everything I have." "Your word meant something to me once," Marcus said. "We'll see if it still does." The months that followed were difficult and awkward and beautiful all at once. Lily met her father for the first time on a Saturday afternoon in a Chicago park. Victoria watched from a distance as Marcus knelt down to the little girl's level, his eyes filled with tears. "Hi, Lily," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm your daddy." Lily looked up at Victoria, then back at Marcus. "Mommy said you were far away." "I was," Marcus replied, "but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere ever again." The little girl studied him for a moment, then reached out and touched his face. You have the same eyes as me." "I do," Marcus laughed through his tears. "I really do." Ethan, now 15, was harder to win over. He remembered Victoria, remembered how she had left, remembered asking his father over and over when she was coming back. "You hurt my dad," he said to her the first time they met again. "You really hurt him." "I know," Victoria replied, "and I'm sorry. I was young and stupid, and I made terrible choices, but I'm trying to be better now." "Are you going to leave again?" Victoria shook her head. "Never. I promise." Ethan considered this. "Promises don't mean much to me anymore, but I guess we can try." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. Over the following year, Victoria made changes, big changes. She stepped back from the day-to-day running of Hartwell Industries, appointing a CEO to handle operations while she focused on the parts of the business that mattered to her: philanthropy, education, and community development. She bought Marcus a modest house in a good neighborhood, not as charity, but as partial restitution for the suffering she had caused. He resisted at first, but eventually accepted when he saw how happy Ethan and Lily were playing in the backyard. He didn't quit his janitor job right away. "I need to do this myself," he said. "I need to earn my own way. That's who I am." Victoria understood. She didn't push. Instead, she helped him enroll in night classes, updating his engineering certifications. She connected him with contacts in the tech industry, not pulling strings, but opening doors. Within 6 months, Marcus had a job offer from a clean energy company. It wasn't the glamorous position he'd once dreamed of, but it was meaningful work, work that mattered, work that let him use his skills to help people. He took the job, and slowly, piece by piece, he started to rebuild his life. The proposal, when it finally came, wasn't from Victoria. It was a quiet evening, 2 years after that rainy confrontation outside the construction site. Victoria and Marcus were sitting on his porch, watching Lily and Ethan play catch in the fading light. "I never thought I'd be happy again," Marcus said softly. "After you left, I was sure that was it, the end of everything good." "I'm sorry I made you feel that way. I know you are." He reached over and took her hand. "And I want you to know something. I forgive you." Victoria's breath caught. "What?" "I forgive you," he repeated, "for everything, the leaving, the lies, the lost years. I spent so long holding on to that pain, that anger. It was killing me. And then you came back, and you apologized, really apologized. And you kept your promises. You've been present, accountable, honest, just like you said you would." "I'm trying," Victoria whispered. "I know. And it's enough." He turned to face her fully. "Victoria, I never stopped loving you. Even when I hated you, I loved you. And now that the hate is gone, all that's left is love." She stared at him, hardly daring to breathe. "I'm not the same man I was 8 years ago," Marcus continued. "I'm older, more tired, more cautious, but I'm also stronger. I know what I want, and what I want is you, not your money, not your power, not your empire, just you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a simple ring, nothing fancy, just a silver band with a tiny diamond. "I bought this with my first paycheck from the new job," he said. "It's not much, but it's mine. I earned it." Victoria was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "Victoria Chen Hartwell," Marcus said, "or whatever name you go by these days, will you marry me? Not because I demand it, not because you proposed first, but because 2 broken people might just be able to put each other back together?" Victoria laughed through her tears. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and for the first time in 8 years, everything felt right. They were married 6 months later, in a small ceremony by Lake Michigan. Ethan served as best man. Lily was the flower girl. Both families, once shattered, now joined together into something new. Victoria's empire continued to thrive, but it no longer defined her. She was a mother first, a wife second, and a businesswoman third. The priorities she had gotten so wrong all those years ago were finally in their proper place. Marcus became the father he had always wanted to be, now to 2 children instead of 1. Lily adored him, and Ethan, slowly but surely, learned to trust Victoria again. And on the 1-year anniversary of their wedding, Marcus found Victoria standing on the porch, looking out at the stars. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "I'm thinking about how close I came to losing all of this," she replied. "How one selfish decision almost cost me everything that matters." "But it didn't," Marcus said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "You came back, you apologized, you changed. That's what matters." "Do you ever regret demanding that apology?" Victoria asked. "That day in the rain, when I proposed, and you said no, you could have just walked away forever." Marcus considered the question. "No, I don't regret it. I needed to hear you say the words. I needed to know that you understood what you had done. Without that, I could never have trusted you again." "And now?" "Now I trust you completely." He kissed the top of her head. "Now I know that you're not going to run, that when things get hard you'll stay and fight. Just like I always promised I would." Victoria turned in his arms and looked up at him. "I love you, Marcus Thompson." "I love you too, Victoria Thompson." He grinned. "See, now we have the same name. No more confusion." "Oi," she laughed, and the sound echoed across the water. In the end, it wasn't money or power or success that saved Victoria. It was something far simpler and far more profound. It was the courage to apologize, the willingness to change, and the love of a good man who, despite everything, never stopped believing that people could become better than their worst mistakes. Because sometimes the path to redemption isn't through grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Sometimes it's through the humble act of saying, "I'm sorry, I was wrong. Please let me try again." And sometimes, just sometimes, the person on the other end says yes. Some people spend their whole lives running from their mistakes, building walls around their hearts, convincing themselves that what they did was necessary, justified, unavoidable. But the truth always catches up. It always finds a way in. The only question is whether we'll have the courage to face it when it does. Victoria almost didn't. She almost let pride and shame keep her from the only thing that ever truly mattered. But in the end, she chose differently. She chose humility over pride, honesty over deception, love over fear. And in doing so, she found something she had searched for her entire life without even knowing it. She found home.